Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Crowd Chair Podcast. And today is going to be our picks for college football of Week 10. It's a bigger week of college football this week. We got a decent amount of ranked versus ranked matchups. But as always, how we always start out these videos is we always start with our shockers of the week. We're coming close to the end of the season here, so things are starting to close up a bit, and so really these point totals are really starting to matter. Me and Sam both got our shockers right last week, with me taking Kansas over Oklahoma. That ended up being correct. And Sam had NC State over Clemson. Both of us got those. I got 7 for the Kansas upset, and Sam got 9.5 for the NC State win. So that puts him 2.5 points, or that gave him another 2.5 point edge over me. He currently has a 17 point lead. He has 43.5. I'm at 26.5. And the Nurse Verbensky. So let's just get this one going. Let's just start with me, as I'm always the first one up on here. And mine is actually not going to be any of these. I have Jacksonville State taking the upset over South Carolina. South Carolina has just been really, really bad all of this year. Or what is their ranking? I think it's 7-2. But South Carolina has looked really, really bad all of this year and continues to look worse and worse. Their offensive line is an absolute train wreck. Everything that could go wrong for South Carolina is going wrong, and that line is 15.5 in favor of South Carolina. And you also look, and if you look at it, Jacksonville State, they match up pretty well in this game. South Carolina actually is Spencer Rattler. He's been sacked the second most times in the country, and Jacksonville State, I think, is like the fourth or fifth most sacks as a team. So obviously that doesn't bode well for. I was going to say the Gamecocks, but they're both the Gamecocks, so that doesn't really work. But yeah, I got Jacksonville State in the upset. This is one of those games I feel like, though, that even though it feels like Jacksonville State should win and it feels like they're the obvious pick, they're going to end up losing because they're the obvious pick. But, we'll have to see. But that's my pick. I'm going with Jacksonville State with the upset. I'm going with Jacksonville State with the upset in South Carolina. Swerbensky, he continues to look for his first points of the season. I think at this point he's just saying, you know what, I'm going to go for big points every single time, and I really don't care anymore. Because he has Rutgers taking down Ohio State, of which you see Ohio State is number one. That's because of the new playoff rankings, which came out today, which has them ranked one, which I think is still ridiculous. They're not the number one team in the land, but they did this last year with Tennessee too. So in any case, Rutgers will get to face them, and Srebensky has Rutgers taking the win over Ohio State. It's like a near 20-point line, so I just feel like he's going for the big points here and hoping for the best. And then next we have Sam, who he went with BYU getting the win on the road against West Virginia. Definitely could see that one. It's definitely a very close one. To tight teams, to very close in talent, and I could definitely see either one of them winning. So, but he's got BYU. I think the Cougars are a 10-point underdog, so definitely one to see there. But yeah, let's get into this week of picks. So we start with our top game being Illinois going on the road to take on Minnesota. That's our first game this week. And believe it or not, in the really weird world of the Big Ten West, Minnesota is currently the top team. Now, technically, there's 4 teams tied for the top spot at 3-2. With them, Iowa, Wisconsin, and none other than Nebraska, all tied for that spot. Of course, Nebraska this week will go and play Michigan State in East Lansing, so that's a huge game for them because not only would that keep them in the race for the Big Ten West, that still sounds so weird to say that Nebraska is in the race for the Big Ten West. But they also, with that win, could become bowl eligible for the first time in a very long time. So I'm sure that that is something that they would love to make happen. But as for this game, Illinois has been really just bad all year long. But somehow lately has found a way to beat Maryland out of absolutely nowhere and then had a little bit of an interesting game against Wisconsin, of which they also nearly won, but ended up blowing in the end. Illinois is not a good team, but the thing is, Minnesota just they're really a strange football team because they don't really have any offensive capability, but their defense has also looked pretty solid. So I'm going to give the edge to the Gophers. But I guarantee you it's not going to be a game you want to see. It's going to be very ugly. It's going to be very sloppy. It's going to be one of those, does anybody want to win this game type of games. So I don't see that game being pleasant to watch. But in terms of who's going to win, I'm definitely going to give it to Minnesota. That's also who Serbenski is going with. He has got the Minnesota Golden Gophers getting the win at home. And then as for Serbenski, or not Serbenski, for Sam, I screw those up every single time. And as for Sam, he also has Minnesota, so we have a clean sweep in favor of the Golden Gophers. And so next we head to Boulder, Colorado, where the Oregon State Beavers, coming fresh off the upset loss in Tucson against Arizona, will head on the road to take on the Colorado Buffaloes, who have been all over the place. They have weeks where, they start off the year really well. They obviously look good to start, and it seems like pretty much reality hit because it has not been it has not been ideal since then. So for this game, I mean, Colorado, I mean, honestly, their offense, Shedeur Sanders is good. They have good skill players, but their offensive line is, ooh, ooh, their offensive line is bad, and their defense is an atrocity. So it's really, especially against Oregon State, it's very tough to trust Colorado. I'm picking for Sam. That's right, because I'm going that way. Um, so my pick's gonna be Oregon State, in case you were wondering. But Sam is gonna pick Oregon State, and so is Strabensky. So we're all taking Oregon State. But it just, Colorado, if they had any kind of an offensive line, I would tend to trust this team a lot more because then they would kind of be borderline USC-ish, and they would be able to, keep on scoring with people. Sanders could keep on, just tossing the ball around and getting nice plays, but they don't have an offensive line. Uh, and when you don't really have an offensive line, and your defense is, I mean, they're worse than USC. I mean, that's how bad their defense is. But when you don't really have an offensive line, you can't protect your quarterback, and he's getting sacked 41 times. That's not good, and that's a lot of hits that the poor guy is taking. Uh, so give me Oregon State. I really do want to see. I know a lot of people hate Colorado, and because of Dion, but personally, I really want to see Colorado do well. I mean, and it's not so much because Deion Sanders is there. I really couldn't care less. Just their football team has always been bad. I mean, the past few years they probably won like what 8 games. I really would love to see Colorado actually be good. It just maybe it's just me taking pity on them, but That's just me. I would love to see Colorado actually be halfway decent, not championship contender, but can't they make a bowl game, But next we have Wake Forest going on the road to take on Duke Blue Devils. Um, Duke has had a rough stretch here. They've lost a couple of games. They lost to Florida State. Then they took on Louisville on the road, and that went miserably bad. Wake Forest is not a great team, but they're also not bad. So this isn't going to be an easy game for Duke, but they need a game to get back on track. This is the perfect one. I think they do just that, and they right the ship here, and they knock off the Demon Deacons. We have the Blue Devils for Srbensky, and then as for Sam, he also has Duke with the win, so we have a Duke clean sweep. Next is a game that you wouldn't expect to be in a very important game this late in the year, but it is. As is Virginia Tech on the road against number 13 Louisville. And as strange as this is going to sound, both of these teams are one-loss teams in the ACC. Yeah, you heard me right. They're both one-loss teams in the ACC. I really don't know how, but Virginia Tech is a 3-1 conference team. Now, of course, Louisville is a 4-1 conference team, as their only loss is within the conference. As they ended up taking a really pitifully bad loss to Pitt, who currently the Pitt Panthers, mind you, are 2-6. So they're not good. And they lost to them 38-21. So this Louisville team is very confusing. North Carolina has had 2 straight duds, and I do mean duds because they look bad. And Duke obviously they were looking good for a while, but then they had a couple duds. Miami was looking good; they took a couple duds. So the conference, and Clemson's got 4 losses already, so it's not going to be them. Shockingly enough, so it's like who in the heck is going to get the nod. But I think I'm on Sam, right? I'm on Sam. Yeah, I'm on Sam. So Sammy for this game. Sam. No one says Sammy. Uh, Sam's got Louisville. He's got the Cardinals getting a win over Virginia Tech. I'm sure that's probably what Srbensky is going to have as well. In fact, I'll just get ready for it. And yes, he does have Louisville, and I'm honestly I'm gonna go with the Cardinal too, because honestly Virginia Tech's not a great team. I mean, how they I've looked at their schedule. I still want to know how on earth this team is only a one-loss conference team. Like, how in the world did that even happen? I mean, they lost to Purdue. Purdue. Purdue's bad, okay? I mean, that's early in the year, but still, they lost to Purdue. They lost to Marshall. They got destroyed by Rutgers. I mean, their conference loss is Florida State, but just how? I mean, yeah, sure, they played Wake Forest, Syracuse, and Pitt as their conference competition, but nobody could beat them. I really am surprised by the fact they're still a one-loss conference team. But that's where we are. And, yeah, Louisville, I'm taking the Cardinals. I mean, just to me, excuse me. But, yeah, to me, VT's bad. So yeah, they no good. Next, we have Boston College going on the road to take on Syracuse. Now, I have a pretty good idea of who Srbensky is going to pick, and I really haven't even looked at what his pick is. But also weirdly, like I said, Louisville and Virginia Tech, they're the only 2 one-loss teams in the ACC left. I mean, obviously, Florida State's undefeated. But in terms of one-loss conference teams, they're it. And there is a buttload of two-loss teams in the conference, and one of them is Boston College, who is shockingly 5-3. Even though they had an early loss at home to Northern Illinois and nearly lost to Holy Cross on top of it. So I don't really have a high opinion of Boston College. This is just not a good team. Syracuse has been struggling lately, obviously. They started off the year 0-4, or not 0-4, 4-0, excuse me. They started off the year 4-0. They went into the Clemson game with high hopes, thinking, maybe we can beat them. Maybe we can, have a really good game and get ourselves into the rankings, stay undefeated. And they lost, and they haven't won since. So, and they've gotten blown out in like every single game. So it does not look sharp for Syracuse. But you look at Boston College, they barely beat UConn, they beat Georgia Tech, they barely beat Army, they barely beat Virginia. Neither of these teams are good, and somebody's going to have to win this game. I don't know how Boston College is 5-3, but they're not a good team. And Syracuse, I know they've lost 4 straight, but they do have at least some talent on that team, unlike Boston College. So I'm going with Syracuse. This is a Friday night game. Duke Wake Forest, so actually it was a Thursday night game, but this is a Friday night game. I'm going with Syracuse simply just because I don't trust Boston College. I really don't. Um, and then Sam actually is going. Or, I'm sorry. Well, first I'm starting with Serbensky, and he has Syracuse. I'm not at all surprised by that. He's a Syracuse man himself. And unless it is, and I mean, just like I am with Michigan, unless it's blatantly obvious that your team's not going to win, you're picking your team. I mean, that's what you do. And we're going to have this problem again, apparently. Let me do that. Whoops. Sorry, having some issues here at the moment as I'm trying to fix this, and there we go. That should be better. Anyways, now we'll go to Sam, and he actually, he has Boston College. Okay. I guess I could see it, but Boston College just doesn't look good to me. Next, though, we have Kentucky going on the road to take on Mississippi State. Sam has Kentucky winning this game. He's got the Wildcats ensuring bowl eligibility, going to 6-3, winning on the road. Serbensky has Mississippi State. He's got the Bulldogs getting the win at home in Starksville. As for me, I mean, neither of these teams are really great. It's really hard to judge Kentucky because they just don't really. They just don't really. I mean, they lost to Missouri. They lost a close one to Tennessee. They beat Florida pretty good, which is really confusing. Like, because Florida. Well, I mean, Florida's a weird team anyway. So actually, no, that kind of makes sense. But they haven't really been overly impressive. There's nothing that you go, wow, that's really good. And as for Mississippi State, they have not looked sharp lately. So I'll go with Kentucky. It'll be a close game for sure. I mean, I could see this going either way, but I'll go with the Wildcats. I think they'll get a close win on the road. Next, we have BYU going on the road to take on West Virginia. BYU, a 3-loss team in the conference. West Virginia, a 2-loss team in the conference. The Mountaineers still actually have still have a shot at the Big 12 title, as there's a lot of one-loss teams ahead of them. Of course, there's also 5 of them. But a lot of them are going to go head-to-head this week, and Kansas is also going to play Iowa State. So, and there's a good chance that Kansas ends up beating Iowa State. So West Virginia's not totally out of the picture. While it doesn't look good for them, they're also not totally out of the picture. As for BYU, I mean, their team's okay, but they're going on the road, and BYU they don't really seem to ever play very well on the road, except for the Arkansas game. But BYU tends to be a sloppy team in road games. They play well at home. They do very well when they're at home, but when they have to take to the road to play somebody, it almost never goes well. On occasion it does, but West Virginia's not a bad team. They have a solid overall squad. I think they get the win at home and they knock off the Cougars of BYU. As for Srbensky, he has West Virginia like I do. He's got the Mountaineers getting the win, defending home field or home turf, whichever one you want to go with. As for Sam, he picked this as his shocker, and he is going to stick with it. He has BYU getting the win on the road against West Virginia. I definitely could see it. I don't really know if it'll happen, but I could definitely see it. I mean, that's another one of those games where I think it's a 50-50, and it's certainly anybody's game. Next is going to be Iowa taking on Northwestern. Now, when I first looked at this, I thought it was a road game, and then I noticed that it said Wrigley Field. And I was like, wait, what? So, yeah, this game's apparently being played at Wrigley, which to me, honestly, is really freaking cool. I think that's awesome. Playing a game at Wrigley instead of playing at Ryan Field or whatever the Northwestern Stadium is, I think is beyond awesome. So that'll be really cool to see. But either way, I'm taking Iowa's to pick for Sam, for Srbensky, and also for me. I mean, let's just go down the line. It'll be a cool environment for sure at Wrigley. I'm sure there's going to be. I mean, that'll be a cool game. I mean, I'm sure that they did with this one because well, nobody from Northwestern cares about really going to games. But it should be really fun for sure. I think that's really cool to see a game at Wrigley, and even for them to play it at Wrigley. But I got Iowa in this one. It's going to be another one of those really just ugly, you don't really want to see them games. But just because it's at Wrigley, I might check it out for a little bit and be like, yeah, that's cool, and then go to something else. Next, we have Miami, Florida, hitting the road to take on NC State. Miami, Miami, Miami. Oh man, it is really tough to really pick this Miami team because certainly I do think that they are the better team. But the thing with Miami is, here he goes again. It happens every time. But I think truly that Miami is the better team. But NC State, Miami has been really sluggish lately. You look at the Hurricanes. They've won two straight overtime games. Actually, they beat Clemson in overtime, and they beat Virginia now in overtime. Which Virginia's bad, so having to win a game in overtime is not very pretty. Especially against a team like Virginia, or if you're like North Carolina, you let somebody lose to them. So I have to adjust this every time. Okay, why? So this is a game that I think certainly can go either way, and should be very fun. But the thing about this one, to me, just Brendan Armstrong has not looked good this year. Now Tyler Van Dyke has also been very sloppy as well. And this is a huge game. I mean, both of these teams are two-loss teams in the ACC, so the loser of this game really is going to pretty much be out of the title race. I mean, there's a lot of two-loss teams in this conference, but point is, any one of them could end up finding their way back into contention. Why does that keep happening? But either one of them could find their way back into contention. If Louisville and Virginia Tech were both to lose at least once, which I think very much can happen. So I think it's anybody's game, but I think this is one that Miami should win. Will they win it? That's a different story. But for NC State, their passing attack has really not been good, and their leading rusher is also their quarterback, who hasn't been good. So, you know, the thing there to me, it's just they haven't been sharp. Um, Now, NC State isn't really giving up a ton of points either, but to me, this Miami's a better team. So, I mean, just through and through, I think Miami overall is just a bit better. So I'm going with Miami in this one. As for Sam and Serbensky, no, they're all right. They're both gonna go with NC State. I mean, like I said, I can see it going either direction. I don't think is I think like I said, I think it's anybody's game. But I think Miami's just a slightly better team, and while they should win, doesn't mean they will. But I think they'll get it done. Next is going to be Texas A&M going on the road to take on Ole Miss, who is ranked at number 10. Bit of a really nice season so far for Ole Miss. The pick for Sam and Serbensky both is actually going to be the Rebels. And as for me, Ole Miss, I'm a bit surprised to see them doing this well. I mean, I thought they'd be a decent team, but I did not really expect them to be still just a one-loss team at this point in the season. Obviously, that win against LSU is probably their biggest one, and is really the reason that they're at number 10. But, the thing is, they're still just a one-loss team in their conference. They're ahead of LSU. Bama's about to play LSU, which would create a three-way tie. So, I mean, that's a huge game, not just for Bama, but also for Ole Miss. And obviously, that's the last game of this week. Um, as I consider that one bigger than Georgia and Missouri. I don't really know where they're going for college game day, but I'm doing Bama LSU. It's a rivalry. But Ole Miss has actually they've been quietly actually decent. I mean, they've had a couple closer games, but the LSU win obviously remains large. Even the Tulane win is a good one for them. I mean, obviously, they took the L against Bama, which was a harsh one, but Ole Miss continues to just look good, and they have continued to succeed this year. Obviously, their next game next week is going to be enormous. So look for a little bit as they're taking on Georgia. So look for this to be a little bit of maybe them looking ahead, because Texas A&M's not the easiest team in the world. A&M's got talent, and they're a good team, but I still think Ole Miss will get it done in the end. I think it's going to be close throughout. And I think Ole Miss, though, at the end of the day, is going to get a close win, and they'll end up pulling through or something like that. So give me Ole Miss in a very close game, very entertaining. That's a noon game, definitely one to see. Next, we have Notre Dame going on the road to take on Clemson. This looked like a really good game at the beginning of the year, and now nobody cares. It is completely fallen off the face of the earth. Nobody really wants to even see this game because of how bad it is. I mean, Notre Dame honestly is not a bad team. Notre Dame's got a solid squad. Clemson has been very much struggling, and they're in danger of missing a bowl game. That's how bad they've been. Still, though, I think this is going to be a really good game, just because it's Clemson. Obviously, it's been a struggle bus for the Tigers this year, but they got to turn around at some point. I mean, they're not going to be able to continue to flounder around like this. And I mean, obviously, what's his name? Dabo Sweeney has done a fantastic job over there, but the longer that this gets ugly, the more pressure that there's going to be, the more ugly things could get. So I think this will be a fun game, but I know it's at Clemson, but I'm gonna go with the Irish. I think it's gonna be another one of those sloppy, just ugly games, but Notre Dame is gonna win a close one, and they'll get the win at Clemson. We all have the Irish in this one, so it'll be a clean sweep in favor of Notre Dame. And then next, we're going to have Kansas going on the road. Number 21, Kansas, going on the road to take on Iowa State. Iowa State is currently 5-3 in the conference. They're also, as I said earlier, one of the 5 one-loss teams in the Big 12. They took a lot. They've taken losses to in the non-con to Iowa and then to Ohio, which was a really weird game. And their lone conference loss is Oklahoma, which was really not even close. Um, this Iowa State team, I really know absolutely nothing about. I have paid zero attention to them this year. But they seemingly have been able to kind of hover around and quietly actually be decent. Like I said, I know nothing about Iowa State. I really don't. I don't even know who's good for them. I mean, I don't know if it's a running game, if it's their passing game, or what it is, but they're 5-3, so that's about all I know. As for Kansas, I know a good amount about them. Obviously, they're a really good passing team. It's going to be a really close game. I think I'm on the wrong person again. Yeah, I'm starting with Sam. I don't know. I might as well just go to the beginning every time, but I'm not gonna change it now. Um, so for Sam's pick for this game, he is taking Iowa State. All right, he's got the Hawkeye or not Hawkeyes. Gal, if you're from Iowa, you'd be really pissed. The Cyclones getting the win on at home over Kansas, getting the upset. As for Serensky, he's gonna take Kansas. He's gonna go with the Jayhawks in the win on the road. And I'm going with Serbinsky. I'm taking Kansas. I just watching them against Oklahoma. They have a really good offense. As for the defense, I mean, I don't really know what the defense is like, but that offense is legitimate. Whether it's Jason Bean or whether it's Jalen Daniels, that offense will score. And as much as the defense is a bit of a mystery, that offense is outstanding, and it will continue to be almost every time. Next, we have UCLA going on the road to take on Arizona. Arizona got the upset last week against Oregon State, and what was a huge win for them. And now they get a chance for another upset. This one against UCLA, which is a similar team to Oregon State, but probably not as good. UCLA, they have a very their QB. They actually have switched from Dante Moore. It's now Ethan Garbers. Uh, so that's the new starting quarterback for them. And really, UCLA has been a defensive team this year, as they have by far given up easily the least points in the Pac-12. Oh well, nope, that's sick. That's even more yet. But Utah, they're the second. They are the second least in Pac-12 with 140 points on the year. I guess I should go really by points per game though. Um, Give me a second as I pull that up for UCLA. But in terms of points per game scored against, they only give up 15 points a game. So UCLA is a very tough defensive team. In terms of offense, maybe it's a little bit of a struggle bus. This is going to be a really close game. I think it's going to be very fun. Like I said, Arizona is riding high after that huge upset last week over Oregon State. I could definitely see Arizona getting this upset. 2 weeks in a row is very hard to do. And while it seems like all the options are there for them to make it happen, if it was Dante Moore at quarterback, I would go with Arizona, but it's not Dante Moore, so I'm going to go UCLA. I thought it might happen last week with Oregon State. I really got to figure out why it keeps doing that. I thought it could happen with Oregon State, but I still went with the Beavers. They ended up falling short. I don't know if it'll happen twice in a row though. I'm going Arizona. I'll go with the Wildcats, and a close game. It's not going to be a blowout in either way. It's going to be very close contest for sure. But I got UCLA. They both have Arizona in the upset. Obviously, I mean, like I said, Arizona looked pretty good in that Oregon State game, but very hard to pull off two in a row. Very hard. So I mean, we'll see. It's definitely possible, but we'll have to see. It's going to be tough. Next, we have Ohio State going on the road to take on Rutgers. So Sam is going to go with Ohio State. He's got the Buckeyes getting the win on the road. As for Srbensky, he took this as his shocker, but kind of like he has been doing the past few weeks, I think, by now. He is still picking Ohio State. He's going with Rutgers for just a big point on his line for shocker. As for me, I obviously am going with Ohio State. Rutgers has had a really surprising season. I mean, they're 6-2. I don't think many people really thought that at this point in the season, Rutgers would be 6-2. But they are. I mean, their defense hasn't been terrible. Obviously, I mean, just overall, Rutgers has been a overall just kind of decent team. Not nothing overly impressive. Nothing that you look at and you go, "Whoa, that's a really good team." But you know, they've been overall just decent. Nothing. I mean, in points per game, kind of like UCLA, they're very close in that department at just a little under 16 points per game scored against them on defense. So they're a tough defense as well. They don't allow many points to be put up on them, which is pretty good for them. In terms of offense, they're not really that special, but it's going to be an interesting game for sure. This is a noon game. It'll be at Rutgers, but I think Ohio State's still going to win. Next is Penn State going on the road to take on Maryland. Maryland is another team that's been really weird because they have been all over the place, and no one really knows what the heck you're going to get from the Terps. As for Penn State, they had a little bit of that. They had that sluggish game against Indiana, probably a little bit of some shock from last week after getting absolutely pummeled. Not even I wouldn't say pummeled, but having an abysmal offensive showing against Ohio State. So they're obviously going to look to turn the page here, especially after the Indiana game where they really didn't look all that special either, and really did not inspire any confidence in anybody in that game. But Maryland, they went 5-0 to start the season, and now they've lost three straight at the hands of Ohio State, Illinois, and now Northwestern last week. So they have really not been good lately. Penn State's on a little bit of a downturn as well. I think this one's going to be a lot closer than people think, and it's going to be a bit of a close contest. Probably closer than I think most Nittany Lion fans would like. But I'm going to go with Penn State. I think it's still going to be a win for Nittany Lions. Of course, next week is also going to be the Wolverines. So that makes this game a little bit more of a kind of a bit of a trap game for sure, as obviously the big game is next week. But I think Penn State still will get it done. I think the Nittany Lions will still pull through and they'll make it close. But it'll still be a win for Penn State. And then that's the pick for everybody for that game. So we have a clean sweep in favor of the Nittany Lions. Next, we go to Austin, where the Kansas State Wildcats, number 23, will head on the road to take on the Longhorns of Texas. In this one, it's going to be Texas for both Sam and Serbensky. They both have the Longhorns gain the win over Kansas State. This is a game I could see being an upset because Texas does not have Quinn Ewers. Now Malik Murphy also hasn't looked terrible in the place of Quinn Ewers. But Kansas State is a very sneaky team. They always seem to find a way to get wins and to just spoil people's plans. I mean, their only two losses this year are Missouri and Oklahoma State. They don't play Oklahoma this year, but their last two games they looked really stinking good. They demolished TCU 41-3. I mean, their last two games they've won by a combined score of 82-3. That's a lot of that's what you call pure domination. Texas. I mean, they ended up taking out BYU pretty easily. They won that one 35-6. But like I said, Malik Murphy is now the starter for Texas. So is he really going to be able to do the things that I cannot stop it from doing that? That Quinn Ewers did? Is he going to be able to do similar things? I don't really know. And I think it's going to be a very fun game. If you were to look at Kansas State, Will Howard, obviously, the quarterback for them. It's going to be a really close one, but I got a feeling because Kansas State, they always seem to come up with that one upset during the year that nobody sees coming. And it doesn't matter how good or how bad they are. They always seem to do this. Now, it's normally with Oklahoma, but now this is a perfect time for them to do this. Now you're getting a backup quarterback. I'm going to go with Kansas State. And this is kind of like my pick with Kansas last week over Oklahoma. Oklahoma did not look sharp, which was why I picked Kansas. But I think this is going to be a bit of a surprise. No one's going to see it coming, and Texas is going to take another L. It's going to be interesting for sure. I think more likely it's going to be Texas, but I think Kansas State gets the upset and they turn some heads. Next, we go to Bedlam and Stillwater, where Oklahoma goes on the road to take on number 22 Oklahoma State, who has been shockingly good, which is really weird because Oklahoma State, they lost Spencer Sanders, and I have no idea really what in the world they have that's making them so good. I mean, I know they have Alan Bowman at quarterback, of which if you're a Michigan fan, you might actually remember that name because he transferred from Texas Tech to come to Michigan. And he lasted here maybe like a year or two as a backup, and now he's transferred back out again, and now he's at Oklahoma State, and he's been their starter, and he actually hasn't been bad. So, interesting for Oklahoma State. As for Oklahoma, they're coming off the Kansas loss. This is a tough game to pick because I definitely could see Oklahoma State winning this game, as this is the last game of the series before Oklahoma ends up leaving for the SEC. So I'm sure Oklahoma State's gonna want to get a win before their arch rivals take off. Gonna be a fun game, but I'm not really sure how good Oklahoma State is. And Oklahoma is gonna play mad. The Sooners are gonna want to win after taking a big L last week against Kansas. They don't have any room for error anymore, and really that they didn't. I don't know if they really had room for error before then. So they need a win, and this actually becomes the big opportunity with Oklahoma State now in the rankings. So I got the Sooners playing mad, and they get the win against their arch rivals, which they probably don't care about, but Oklahoma State certainly does. So give me Oklahoma. That's also going to be the same pick for Sam and Serbensky. So we all actually are taking the Sooners to knock off the Cowboys of Oklahoma State in Stillwater in the last matchup. before and in the last matchup, really, because they're not planning on doing it anymore. Next is Washington at USC. The Trojans are ranked number 20, Washington number 5. Um, Sam's pick for this game is okay. His pick is USC. I mean, sure, I guess. I mean, Washington has had 2 games of which they haven't looked great in, but all right. As for Sermensky, he is taking Washington. He's got the Huskies remaining undefeated. This might be the only time that Washington has a chance of losing. I need to figure out why that happens. This might be the only game though that I really think Washington has a chance of losing. They, like I said, they haven't necessarily looked sharp lately. They've had a couple kind of just meh games where they really just haven't looked great. As their last 2 games have been since Oregon have been Arizona State and Stanford, of which they beat Arizona State at home 15-7 in a sluggish game, and then against Stanford they won 42-33. Stanford's not really a great team either, so neither game have they really looked that good. And even that, oh wow, I actually didn't know they had that many big games. I mean, even after USC, apparently, I didn't even know this. Yeah, apparently after even USC, they still got to play Utah, and that's not an easy opponent. They still got to play Oregon State, and obviously Washington State, but, this is not the last big game for Washington. And, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's obviously a big matchup of quarterbacks. Washington has their good receiving receivers, and USC has their good receivers. So, and USC is coming off a game where they really just did not look good against Cal. I mean, the defense anyway. The offense, of course, this is going to be a game that honestly I think is going to be like very much high scoring. It's going to be whoever gets the ball last, which quarterback gets it last, and ends up, driving down the field. I think it'll end up being Washington. It's going to be very close, and it's going to be higher scoring. If you love offense, watch this game. There's going to be a lot of it. So I'll go. I'll go with Washington in this one. And I'll take the Huskies in a very close game over the Trojans. And then next we have the 2 big games in the SEC. First, we start with Missouri going to Georgia. Missouri's a really good team. Missouri has been really sharp this year, and Missouri has actually looked really stinking good. I mean, they obviously have Luther Burden, who has been absolutely dominant for them, and Brady Cook has been outstanding for them. He continues to play outstanding football, and they have a decent running back as well. So, I mean, Missouri has it all. Then you got Georgia, who of course has Carson back. But the thing with Georgia is they're missing Brock Bowers. So that's really the main question. Is can Georgia win without Brock Bowers? They beat Florida, but now you get to play this really, really impressive looking so far Missouri team who continues to keep winning. Now it's a huge game. You have to win this game, or Missouri's going to take control of the SEC East. Is going to take control of the SEC East. So can you win without Bowers? I think it's going to be very close because Missouri's offense is very tough and is very good, but their defense has not really impressed me. So I think the Bulldogs will get it done. They still have good receivers. I mean, you got Lad McConkey, you got Thomas, you got Dominic Lovett. You got all 3 of those guys are all good options to throw to. As much as they are missing Bowers, they do have those 3 guys. So I think Georgia will still get it done. It'll be a really fun game. It's going to be a really good contest. There's really 2 teams I don't even mind. So it'll be fun for sure. But I got Missouri, or I got Georgia getting this one in a very close one, and that is the same pick for the rest of the guys. They also both have the Bulldogs with the win over Missouri. And next we have another SEC Tiger. This one being LSU in what I consider game of the week. I mean, you can consider Missouri Georgia game of the week. Take your pick. I'm just going with the rivalry game. And I'm going with LSU on the road against Alabama. What a huge game this is. I mean, both of them really are, but this one, I mean, they're both games for the lead of the SEC. So it's a big week for the SEC. It's really a big week for a lot of teams, but this is a big week overall. That's well, let's say that. We'll go with Sam's pick first. Let's go with the guys' picks. Sam has LSU winning this one over Alabama and taking control of the SEC West. As for Serbensky, he is going to go with Alabama. He's got Roll Tide getting the win. They remain one-loss team and they keep control of the SEC and they make it tough. As for me, this is going to be a really fun game. I mean, these two are enormous rivals, obviously. Honestly, if you were to ask me, I think this is one of the better rivalry. I think this is a really underrated rivalry and one of the better ones in college football. I mean, obviously you got Texas, Oklahoma. I'm not putting it with those, but it's always entertaining. They obviously hate each other. It's always a close game, and it's always fun to see. And this is going to be another really good entry. You got Jaden Daniels and the LSU offense, which has been absolutely rolling this year against what has been a very tough and very stout Bama defense. And you got the Bama offense, which has been kind of, slumping and floundering around quite a bit. And you have that offense taking on LSU defense that really just has not looked good. So, it is a very even matchup, but, and I've said this consistently about Bama, and every time I have been wrong somehow, but my mentality still with the Tide is somebody's going to beat them. Someone's going to do it, whether it's the SEC title game, whether it's, gonna be Kentucky or Auburn or whoever else, someone is going to beat Bama, and I think it could be LSU. Um, you know, the Tigers are really stinking good offensively, and they're going to score points on Bama, and the question is, can Bama score points? I mean, they have not had the offensive capability to keep up really with pretty much anyone. And I mean, they've certainly gotten better as the years gone along, but Jalen Milroe just doesn't look really that great. You know, so anything's possible for sure, but LSU's got the offense. And they're not Tennessee. They're not going to flounder in the second half. I think LSU gets it done. It's going to be a very fun game, but give me the Tigers in a very close one. And that's it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. We're going to have some, look for the other videos as well. We got the new playoff rankings, so take a look at the playoff rankings video. We'll have the NFL picks as well, so check out all those videos. And that's it for me. So until next time, adios, everyone.